Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged. Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We have a very special guest with us this morning. We have Mr. Mark Terry. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. You?
Oh yeah, doing great. Yeah, we're really excited to talk to you this morning, and I think we have a really exciting show planned for you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark, for taking the time to be with us. I know you're busy. I follow you online too and just love the work that you're doing and advocating for all the educators really in Texas and because of that, the US. So thank you for taking the time to be with us today. I greatly appreciate it.
You bet. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and dive in a little bit. Can you tell us about your journey so far?
Well, sure. I originally, you know how you say you're the best teachers are ones who always wanted to be a teacher. Well, that wasn't me. I was from a poor background. I thought, you know what? I want to make money. I don't want to be poor. So I originally started out pre-law, and as I got into probably my third year, I decided I didn't want to really spend the rest of my life working with these folks. Nothing against them, but they just didn't hit my heart. And I was playing racquetball at the time, back when it was popular, with a professor I didn't know he taught elementary education, but he said, and I was talking to him about my frustration. He said, "Why don't you take one of my courses? You got hours to burn." So I did. I said, yeah, right. I'll take one, and that'd be it. First class was visiting a third grade classroom and watching the teacher in action, and I was smitten. So only spent 3 years teaching, which might tell you something about my teaching ability. But they moved me into leadership, and that's where I found my niche. I've spent my career. I spent 25 years as a principal, 7 as an assistant, both at elementary and high school. And at first you don't realize just the key position you hold in not just schools, but in the community. And I think principals sell themselves short. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but they sell themselves short in their power. They really have an impact in the community. Um, and then as I went along, I got involved with doing volunteering for my association, my professional association, serving on committees, and then somebody pushed me into running for office. So I ended up being the president of TEPSA. Then got involved nationally, ended up being the president of NESP, which were great honors, but they pale in comparison to being in a building. They just do. So I retired after 33 years, went to work for TEPSA. I'm the deputy exec there, and my main job is helping out with membership, advocating for principals. So I'm at the Capitol a lot during our 140 days. I'm there 24/7. And then I do a tremendous amount of visiting to schools, and I X them out, tweet them out, whatever they call it now. But I go in and I want to brag on principals, and I want to showcase them to the community. So I will tweet them out, and then I'll tag their mayor, I'll tag their chamber of commerce, I'll tag uh, the legislator that's in their area, I'll tag their mom, their dad, their kids, whoever I can tag, I tag. And it's really interesting because often the first response I get is from a community member or the chamber or the mayor. And I try to tell principals, people are watching you and they want their schools to be great, and they will retweet those. So that's kind of my life now. I have a home in Grapevine, which is in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and an office in Austin. So my Austin life and my family life. I spend the week in Austin and at home on the weekends, but that's where I am, and I enjoy the heck out of it. But the most comfortable is when I'm in a school. That's when I feel like, oh man, this is nice. So that's kind of my journey. There's a
I
lot more in
love
it.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's so interesting because we had, I can't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, sometime along, we had someone that kind of shared your experience. He's like, I like teaching. She's like, but my heart was in leadership even
Yep.
before I went into college. She's like, I remember even in, high school, like leadership was in my heart. And
Yeah.
so she said, I only taught a few years, and the first chance I got, I moved into administration. And I
Yep.
think that, when you have that heart and desire, that's an important thing not to overlook.
Oh
And,
yeah.
it could lead to frustration if you think you need to be somewhere X amount of time before moving to the next level. So we've had more than one person share that. So I think that's
Right.
important to highlight as well. And then you were able to get into the role where you felt like you were doing the most and being the most effective. So, that's important, I think, for others to hear as well.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk for a minute about just the importance of school leadership.
Mm. Wow. I don't know if I can adequately say how important it is, but the I think the older you get, uh, and it's obvious. My oldest child pointed out that I'm really gray, but the older you get, the more you realize that you've had an impact on individuals that you'll never know. You'll never know and that impact can be negative or it can be positive. And I would hope that 99% of the impact I've had on people has been positive. But your key in your school, number one, so people look at you in your school for leadership, and they look at you in your neighborhood that your school is in, and then they look at you in your community, and then wherever you are, people. I don't know if you've seen this. You probably have. People kind of know you're a principal. I was in Minneapolis yesterday. I'm in a restaurant. I'm talking to somebody, and they're like, and I'm like, something wrong? Well, you just sound like my school principal. I said, well, that's because I am your school principal. So you're important in leading the school and being the person who kind of is the lighthouse for what your school and community is about, because your school is a kind of a reflection of your community. And uh, I've been in urban, uh, kind of a rough area, urban school, which was a lot of fun. I've been in poor rural, and then I spent my majority of my career in a very wealthy school district. And the kids are all looking at you for the same thing: love, acceptance, affirmation, guidance. But it's funny, the teachers are looking for the same thing: love,
Oh, yeah.
affirmation, acceptance, guidance. And it's funny, even when I was like a 30-year-old principal, the parents were looking for love, acceptance, affirmation, and advice. And so you don't realize when you first get into it the key leadership component you're going to have for so many different areas. It can be overwhelming sometimes, but I always kind of relished it.
Yeah, that's such a good point too, because you really are. I one of the things I think so important is that connection to the community. So I love how you tweet those out and connect with them, because my thing is from about the age of 4 or 5 till about 18, children spend a large portion of their waking hours in a
Yes,
schoolhouse. And so, it needs to be something that's not disconnected from the community. And it
absolutely.
does, we need to mesh them together as much as possible. And the face of the school is the principal, whether they
Yep.
want it to be or not. You are exactly right. And that's something they need to be aware of in connecting with the communities themselves. And you know, embracing parents and embracing businesses, and trying to build that that relationship with the community, because I think that's so important in advancing the cause of education in the schools.
It's funny too that I my family was such an important part. My kids went with me to every school I was at. If I was in an inner city rough school, that's where they started. If I was in a rural school, that's where they were. When I was in South Lake, they went with me to school. I felt like the community had to see that I was so trusting of the teachers and the school that I trusted my own kids to that school, and I trusted my kids to their kids. So they're going to be with your kids because I love every kid, and my kids are no different than your kids. They need a great education. They need somebody to love them. They need somebody to guide them, and so my kids are going to be there too. Then my wife ended up being a principal secretary for 20 years, so we were just all in on the community. So we did every community activity, every volunteer, and people say, "Wow, that's just too bad. I need some downtime." You're a principal. You don't have downtime. I mean, so one of the things that, well, what do you do to disengage? As a principal, you can't. I mean, you go. I say, okay, let's go. We'll go. Let's go to eat breakfast. We'll go down to Waffle House. We'll eat breakfast. I guarantee you, some kid's going to come up, Mr. Terry. Yeah. So it's hard to disengage, but I really don't try. I just do my life with my community. So that's too
You know,
much, but hey.
no, but it really resonates. Because we asked, several if how did they, do relax, or how do they do have that downtime, and most of the responses are similar to yours, that they really don't. Their thing usually is prefaced with, I know I need to do better, but they don't.
Yeah. See, I've given up on that. We do take like when I have some maybe I'm speaking in like Minneapolis or I'm speaking in Washington. My wife will go. We'll go hiking. So hiking is a big deal. You can kind of get
Mhm.
away from it. But I was telling the story to somebody. Well, you get away from hiking. That's good. And I said, well, I was at the Olympic National Forest. We were at the top of a mountain. We were just about 200 feet from the peak. We passed this family, and they're one of my families. I mean, you just don't get you don't get away, and it's like, but I'm good with that. I'm good with that, and my family is used to it, and my wife is. She's even worse than me. A principal secretary is known by everybody.
Everybody, yeah,
She
exactly.
she gets it more than I do, and we kind of relish it. We don't mind at all. It's a kid. Come on.
Well, and we know they run the school too, pretty much.
Well, I'm telling you what, I was so blessed to have some great secretaries and the bus drivers. I mean, talk about key point of your school. If you don't take care of your bus drivers, you're in trouble. But that's for maintenance. That's for everybody. You don't know who's going to be the one that impacts a child. It could be, you just don't know. I mean, I've had that custodians who are like key to specific children. And so you don't know who's going to be the person that impacts them the most. So I think it's important to take care of everybody and include everybody.
I
So
really appreciate you saying that. One of the things I often share is I still remember my first grade bus driver. I didn't go to kindergarten, but first
no,
grade, and this is pushing on 50 years ago now, half a century. But I still remember her, and I still remember her name, Miss Green, and I remember her in the afternoon when we get on. How was your day? Did you have a good day? And just something simple, but just that connection that she made and showing that she cared. I remember 50 years later.
yes, yeah,
So I appreciate you saying that, because every person in that school has the opportunity to impact some students,
yeah,
and most of them usually do on some level. So I think I don't think anybody else has brought that up, but that is such a critical piece. And you recognizing that shows that you value them and treat them that way, so that,
sure.
they feel valued and heard as well.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you? I mean, the worst thing I could do is be really kind to a kid and kind to a teacher. and a parent, and then they see me uh, being disrespectful to a bus driver or a maintenance guy or a cafeteria lady. But I had a leg up on them. Remember, I grew up poor. My mom was a cafeteria lady, so she was a cook in the cafeteria, and I had a short part-time job as a school custodian after school. So when I talk to my custodians and they're acting like their job is menial, when I could say, you know what, I was a custodian.
Oh,
They're like,
wow.
what? I said, yeah, I know what you go through. I know that you talk to the teachers about trashing out the room and they keep doing it and how much that, but I'm telling you, the kids appreciate when they come into school and you've made the room pristine and you're so clean. And so when I go visit schools, one of the things I say, I seek out the secretaries and I seek out the custodians, and I tell the custodians, man, this place looks great. You guys, man, I mean, the kids probably really appreciate you, and they just puff up, and
Right. Yeah.
it's like why would you not do that? Just out of humanity, why would you not do that? So, and I have an interesting story about. Let me. I know this is off topic, but it kind of is. I had a principal asked me how come people came and took care of my building first when there's a maintenance issue or you needed the grass cut. And my question to him is, when's the last time you had them in your office for coffee? What? I said, yeah, they can come by my coffee. I have donuts, I have coffee, and let me tell you, maintenance guys love donuts, and so they come and see me often. So if you call and I call at the same time on the same issue, who do you think they're going to go take care of first? It's going to be me. Now that's not. I'm not doing that on purpose, but that's just the way you treat people. So anyway, that's a side story. Sorry about that. I get carried
No,
away.
that
Very
no,
passionate.
no, I no, I love it. In fact, when I did my not my student teaching, but my block teaching, his name
Mhm.
was Dale Johns. I still remember him. He's
Yeah.
actually a principal. He's a principal in Florida. He may be retired now. I haven't, interacted with him for a few years, but I'll never forget. He said the first thing you need to do is take care of the front office and your cafeteria workers. And he
Yep.
would bring them in donuts and he would bring them in coffee and the custodians, because he said, you know what? When you have an issue in your room or you have, an issue going on, or he said you want a little extra piece of pie,
Yeah. That's
which
right.
made me, listen up. But he's like, you build that relationship with them. And it's
Yes.
like you said, he's like, I'm not doing it to butter them up. He's like, I know the importance of what they do, but they appreciate that.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's a powerful point that you made. Absolutely.
Great. Great.
So we know that you spend a lot of time advocating for your schools and your people. Can you
Yeah.
speak for a moment on the importance of principals doing that at the individual school level?
Okay. So now you ask me to go off the. This is where I get upset. I don't get so upset. This is where I get passionate. Yes, I started advocating back when I was an assistant principal. I was one of the first things I did at TEPSA, which is our Elementary Principals Association in Texas. That is our professional association. First one I was on was an advocacy, and so I got an opportunity to go visit legislators and start talking about schools. And in the '90s they were very dismissive. Um, so I went in to see my legislator, and he was very, very dismissive. I was a little assistant principal. I was nervous, and he's like, "No, I was a principal." He was kind of dismissive, and pretty much told me after I talked to some stuff, he like, kind of ushered me out of the office, and I got about 4 steps. And I said, "Wait a minute, wait, he works for me. He's
Exactly.
what am I doing meekly going out?" So I went back in and got in some big old argument with him, and he was anti-public school, and boy, we got into it pretty good, and I was kicked out of his office, and I said, "Okay, that's okay. This guy doesn't need to be serving," and so I became active with after hours, off school time, no school material, all that stuff with a group that was campaigning against this guy, and we beat him. We organized 5 principals that went up, did a phone bank after school at a some. So it was a volunteer place, and we beat the guy. I said, okay, the power of the principal is great. And so what I do on a regular basis when the legislature's in session, I go to the Capitol and I advocate for public schools and I advocate for principals, but I also keep my principals informed. And then we bring in about 120 principals and assistant principals. We train them on how to go up to the Capitol, and they go up and they advocate for education. And I do the same thing in DC. I was asked to lead a session on how you visit an office, how to make a big impact. So I have done that at the nationals as well, and I enjoy it, but I'm very disturbed by it. When I first started going to the Capitol, I thought, probably 80% of these people have a lot of great ethics, their integrity, and they're really after what's best for kids. And now I think I'm down to about 12 people. It is so disturbing to me that they talk about public ed and they talk about a love of teachers, and then they just stick a knife in them, and they don't fund, or they cut programs, or they make up stuff. I mean, how many drag shows have you seen in elementary school? I mean, really, have you seen one? I've been in 400 schools in the last 5 years. I've yet to see any of that. I've yet to ferret out any porn in any elementary school library. I think I had a copy of Captain Underpants, but when you read that, it's not really not. Come on. It's just ridiculous, some of the things that you hear. And I try to hold them accountable for that. But the disturbing, and I'm a registered Republican, and I've worked for my legislator, and I like him and able to work with him. But what I'm seeing right now is you're either way over here, you can't see my hand, or way over here. And there's nobody here. I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Principals got to work in this realm. We don't work here or here. We work here. And convincing them is very, very difficult. But I try to bring a human perspective to talk about the kid that I tell them my stories, and I'm pretty open about it. And I talked to one of the stories I've told the legislator that made a difference was I said, as a young principal, I was placed in a poor school, and by golly, you're going to get that attendance rate up. So that's what I was doing, man. I was doing that, and this was really a seminal moment of my career. I had this little girl never on time. I thought, golly, what am I going to do? I punished her. I did this. I did that. Incentives. Finally, I said, I'm going to find out what's the problem. So I'll be arrested now, but it's like a stalker. I parked down the street from her house, or her little bitty house, rental house, to watch in the morning. She came out. She had two little kids, one on each side of her, and she turned away from the school. And I thought, oh, man, this is not going to go well for me. I know what's coming. She walks these kids down to a government subsidized daycare, comes back, goes back in the house, in there for a while, comes out with her stuff and goes to school. So I've driven back to school, and I'm thinking, okay, I know this is a problem. So ends up, her mom worked all night in an establishment. She came home, got her little brother and sister ready, took them down to daycare. She's 10. Came back home, fixed breakfast for her mom, coming back to school. So she is raising those children. And here I am unloading on her because she can't make it to school on time. And I'm like, I felt about the size of a pea. And so I'm like,
Right.
okay, so, and that was so important. I said, look, I am going to spend the rest of my life not making assumptions about children. And that's what I'd say to legislators. Why are you making assumptions about schools that you don't know? You haven't been. You don't go with me to visit. You won't listen to the principal. I said, if you want to make a difference, you come with me. I'm going to take you to some places and show you what's really happening in schools.
Really
and we don't start the school. Let's drive around that neighborhood first and see what they go through to get to school. And so I get very passionate at the Capitol. Sometimes I'm the one they say, let Mark testify on this one because they're going to yell at him and he can take it. It's funny too. I was getting just reamed out by one committee, and one of them asked me why I don't get upset because they'd get in these shouting matches. I said, look, I was a principal for 45 years. I had elementary. I said, you are nothing compared to a kindergarten mom who didn't get the right teacher. I'm just telling you, that's a chewing out. So, and they laughed, they chuckled, but it's so true.
But it's
Uh,
true, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm always optimistic, and I like a lot of them up at the Capitol, but they're not doing what's right for kids. They're just not. So
No, and two things you shared there that I see too is, politics has become so divisive that,
so bad.
and education is that battlefield for them,
Yeah.
and it does us a disservice with that. Like you said, we have to worry about funding, not only that, but we have to, because of the culture that's being created, we have mass shortages everywhere
Oh
now.
yeah.
So it's
Oh
like, double trouble. But I
yes.
loved your point about seeing that child. We actually were speaking. I spoke to a woman. She was a principal, and she's the director of professional development now in Ireland.
Mm,
And she talked about her first few years. She was elementary school teacher, but then she became a liaison with the schools, with the community. And
mm,
what she would do is go out, like you talked about, going out into the neighborhoods, going into the homes, meeting the families, seeing what's going on. And she said, when I went back into the classroom, she said, I wasn't worried about whether that child did their homework last night. I was just glad they came to class.
yes.
And I'm
Yes.
like, what a powerful, and just like you with that, it changes your perspective of what's really important and what's really going on in the lives of our students. I was thinking, I wonder how many teachers, because we talk about the legislators, but even I wonder how many teachers would change their mind if they were to go out into the community and see the lives of the students and what their life is and what it's about and what they're doing. And maybe they'll have a little bit more compassion and a little bit more understanding, because some of them do. Like you said, she's raising her kid, her own brothers and sisters before she even goes to school in the morning.
I think that's so key. When we used to, I would have my teachers go out to visit. I'd go with them, and one of my neighborhoods, I would go with them because it was pretty bad. But there's so many stories. I met a family. It is a large immigrant population. They're in a rental home. The dad is tearing up the carpet when I went to visit, tearing up the carpet in the house. And I said, "Oh, you remodeling?" And I found out, no, they're going to go sell this used carpet to buy presents for the child, for their children. They had like six. And I'm thinking, okay, surely we can do better than this. So I got some folks to, it was kind of like an angel tree, but for the whole school. And so we raised money. You had a cut. And some of the community members are so great. They just gave me money and said, we're going to go get these kids taken care of. So the whole school pretty much got presents, and except for my kids. And I'm like, wait a minute, how got every kid? So I, I think you're talking about the importance of a principal. I think there are people in your community waiting for you to ask. And if you don't ask, they don't know. And so I can't think of a time that I was turned down by maybe a more well-heeled or somebody who's more successful in a community when I went and said, I've got this kid. We just found out he's fifth grade and he's never had glasses. He can't see. And so I talked to my doctor. He said, the next day, he had an appointment with one of the ophthalmologists. Kid had glasses the very next day. And so that just came out of talking to people. And so as a principal, I don't know how I got on this, but anyway, as a principal, use your voice for the
Yeah,
kids, whether it's the legislators, whether it's a community member, use your voice and ask.
absolutely. In
Sorry, I
fact,
don't.
I'll we talked to a principal. I think she was the one from Canada, and I loved her because she was her the exact same thing you're saying. She's like, the community, especially businesses, they want to be involved, but if you
Yes.
don't ask them, they don't know what to do. But what she would do is, if she knew a business had something that she wanted or needed, what she would do is send them a letter or an email and tell them, I need this on this date, I will be here on this date. And if that date doesn't work, let me know the date. But basically, she wasn't asking them. She
Yeah.
was just letting them
No,
know
no.
I'm coming to get it. Yeah.
Okay,
And
I'm writing that
it
down.
worked. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
That's beautiful. I love
Yeah.
it.
I'm like,
I'd
I
love to
love
meet
it. Absolutely.
her. Love to meet her. That'd be great. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about next? I can tell you. I can just go. So direct me.
All right. So looking back on your career so far, who are some of the leaders you've served alongside that have made the biggest impact on your leadership philosophies?
Oh, wow. That would surprise me. There's there. Let me go back all the way. I'm going to go back to because remember I was poor, but in my family you kind of went to work or military. That was it. Um, so I had an elementary principal, Jackie Carden, that has a school named after her, all that. She was extremely important to me as a child because I had a love of reading. My first grade class had 12 in it, so it's hard to escape, you know. But she took a very uh, insistent interest in me and kind of made me go the track where I was going to end up. She knew I was going to end up in college. She knew I was going to do something, but if it hadn't been for her, I probably would have been, I don't know what I'd done, but she was very key and instrumental. And I look back on some of the way she acted. She was old school, paddle. She was no nonsense, but she loved kids. And so that right off the bat helped me out. But also when I was in elementary school, I had a librarian who took an interest in my family because we were pretty much, I didn't know anybody else. It was from a divorced family. And so she took an interest in me and my brothers and took us I remember we're in a small rural town. She took us to the opera, to the symphony, she to art museums. Then we went over to her house one day, and she had the table set with all these forks and spoons, and I'm like, "What is this?" Cloth napkins, and it was. So I look back on her. Her name is Shirley Campbell. That the interest you take in kids and you prepare them for a full life. That's how far you have to go in this journey for leadership and helping kids. So I've tried to be an example of that, and because these kids need those experiences to really feel alive. And then as I got into education, I had Floyd Sanders was my first principal where I was an assistant. He had been a retired Marine. This is back. He would smoke his pipe at school. This is how long ago it was. But he taught me the importance of patience and not making rash decisions about parents. Because I was a young assistant principal, ma'am. They came in there and I said, "No, that's going to be it. This is no, and this is not going to happen." And he would sit for an hour with the parent, same parent, cleaning his pipe, talking. They would all leave laughing and hugging. And I'd say, "Well, I guess you overturned me." He said, "No, no, we still said no." And I thought, "How do you do that?" He said, "Mark, you need to shut your mouth and you need to listen and just listen to them." That's all they wanted. So I thought, okay, so patience in all areas is very important. Knowing when to talk, knowing when to shut up. My wife is very good at this too. She grew up in a Mennonite community, very humble. Yeah, I don't know why she married me. I'm on the opposite end of that. But that that humbleness, that quiet, that pausing and patience is, I think, really key for kids. And then I've had, gosh, so many principles that I can't even name them that I would see aspects that I wanted to copy. And I think that principals who don't, like when we had our principals meeting, we went out to lunch as a group of principals, maybe 5 or 6. And some of them were old school, some were brand new, some were curmudgeons, some were pumped up. But each of them gave me gave me time to look at things I needed, like love of people, not just love of kids. You got to love people. I mean, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
have people come in and they're going to be mad and grumpy and they're going to yell at you and they're going to, but you know what? That's their child. And you would do the same thing. I mean, some of the worst people that come into my office are teachers about their kids. And man, they go off on you. But you have to have that love of people. You have to have the love that, okay, everybody means something, and especially children. So everybody has worth. And I think my faith goes back to that a lot, but people have worth. Another is authenticity. Those principals who were authentic with me and would say, give me advice about, let's take a look at this. Bob Wyndham is one I can think of that was very wise and would kind of poke your thinking cap. And so that just that authenticity, you got to be real around kids. And I would tell people if you want to go into a profession where you kind of hide your feelings or hide your thoughts or you kind of fudge on this, don't go into an elementary school because the kids are going to ferret you out and they're going to rat you out and they're going to call you on the carpet. They can see when you're not genuine and you don't really love them. They can, oh my,
Absolutely.
see that. And uh, so, but I think, thinking of another one. Mike Rhodes, he's a good friend of mine. He was actually the principal of my wife. She was one of his secretaries, and he's got such a love of kids and such a thinking mind and uh, calm in the storm. I think that's something the principal has to have, calm in the storm, because you're going to have issues where it's just pandemonium. For example, my kid didn't get off the bus. Where is he? Well, he's probably at a friend's house. That's 99% of the time they get off the friends. No, no, no. He would never do that. Well, let's call it, and they're just frantic. And you got to keep you got to respond appropriately. It's important this day and age, especially. But you got to keep that calm in the storm. You can't be flaking out, and you gotta remain calm. And then I say the last thing is that those principals who've shown me that it's important to grow. And I'm long on my career, but if I don't want to grow, or I don't want to try new things, or I don't want to look at a new idea the principal brings in, or that I see, then I need to get out because you got to be growing all the time. And you're great. I love to watch you because I get to grow. So yeah, figuring out individual people is hard because it's like I think back in my career, and they're like this lump of great leaders that I'm pulling things from. And it doesn't have to be education. Like Herb Kelleher, the book
Right.
Nuts. The book Nuts was also pretty important to me because I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is you can be creative in your work, and you can have fun with people. So it doesn't have to be. And I don't know him individually, uh, but I would say if I was going to think of one person who impacted me more than anybody else, past my faith, that's going to be a fictional character named Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird.
Mm.
He was the father that I didn't have that I wanted to be. Wise, calm, and loving of his kids and people. I thought, so when I look back, I read that book like every other year. So it's weird that one of your main influences is a fictional character, but when you don't have that person there with you, that's where you go where you get that guidance, and that kind of worries me about kids who don't have a father or don't have a figure, that you go where you can find it. So I don't know if that answers that question, but that's kind of where I get my influences.
Oh, yeah.
Hope that worked.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great that you've had so many people that have influenced you. That we were talking to another school leader a while back, and she said, never underestimate how many people you influence. And we can't see, we can't see all the people that we've helped. So yeah, that's awesome, and it's a
Well,
great. Yeah.
uh, you do get sometimes you get that rare little nugget. So I'm in
Mm-hmm.
my office,
Yeah,
or I'm in
thanks.
the office for the school. I had this lady walk in. This was, gosh, several years ago, but I probably she was probably I'd been anyway. She walked in. I said, Valerie Barney. And she said, I can't believe you remember me. So she's a grown woman with a child and kids. And I said, what are you doing here? She says, well, I have a kid coming to your school next year. And I'm like, wow. She had been in my first class in sixth grade. I said, wow, it's so terrific to see you. She said, but that's not why I'm here. You're going to be here next year, but I want to come in here and tell you what the impact you had on my life. And I'm like, what? She said,
Uh,
she brought out this piece of paper. She said, I'm a teacher now. I teach English in the school district that's next to me. Here's the letter I sent to my parents, and she's been teaching 8 years, that I give my parents on the first day they're there. I'm like, she'll read it. So I read it right in the middle. Why I became a teacher. I had a sixth grade teacher, Mr. Terry. I mean, I'm balling. She's balling. The secretaries are balling. But she ended up being a teacher for me. Thank goodness she was a good one. But she ended up teaching for me. And so every once in a while, God sends these people to you and say, "You look at this is what you did for me." And she was going through a hard time, and it was just really, really affirming. But then there will be a kid to come up and say, "Hey, thanks for you had such a great impact on me." And I'm like, "What do you? I don't. What do you mean? Well, you remember that time in the hallway out of these 20 something years that I think I was having a bad day, and you came up and you asked me, patted me on the shoulder, asked me what was going on. You talked to me, you loved on me, and sent me on my way." She said, "You remember that, don't you?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, absolutely, I remember that day because there's been 100 of them that you as
Right.
a you do." So surely one of those I remember. But you get those nuggets. But then there's the hundreds that you're talking about that you don't see.
Right.
So it's important. So when you make an impact, is it a great impact, or did you tear somebody down? Were you were you too rushed, or did you take time? Were you doing this, or did you put it down and say, "Tell me what is going on. I can't. I love you, and let's talk about it." So I, I would caution principals about being too rushed in their day. The tyranny of the urgent. In
Mhm.
fact, most of my superintendents, one of them would get mad at me. I would tell them that I'm not interrupting my time with a child if they come to the school. Most of them said, "Oh, that's what I want out of a principal." One of them didn't, but I said, "I'm just not going to do it. I'm gonna. That kid needs me at that moment. I got to be there for that child." And
Yeah.
so it's you do get to see a little bit of that. Not enough, but just enough. And I think God does that to us. Just where we're getting kind of like, "Oh, I'm getting tired." You get boom, you get that. Oh yeah, you go along
Yeah.
on a boom. Yeah, it's kind of like a little wake up call every time you get that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. It's so good. Yeah. I mean, I even think back, every once in a while, like a student from 30 years, 25
Yes,
years ago will message me like on Facebook, and it's just like,
yeah.
remember this? Or I said, it's funny because back then I coached. So when I hear somebody address me as coach, I automatically know that's someone from 30 years ago. And, so it is, yeah, just those little, it's like a pick me up that
Oh yeah.
just keeps you going. So
Yep.
yeah, I think we all have those. So,
But
well, thank
also,
you.
as part of the community, it's important that what you do in the community is important too. Like when I was principal, I never had to drop alcohol in my house, never, because kids are going to come over with my sons and daughters, and they're going to play. Then you go out, you don't order alcohol, and there are people are like, "Well, you got it. Come on, you can have some wine. You can," and I'm like, yeah, I could, and I'm not condemning you if you do. You go ahead. But for me, the kids are seeing me,
Yeah.
and I want to be on my best. I don't want to be slurring. I don't want to have a
Mm,
slopping around a beer. I mean, come on. I want to be there for the kids. So don't give me that. Just live your life, impact kids, be positive to the kids and community. So
yeah. Oh, I
I'm getting
love
too
that.
carried away. I get worked up. So
No, that's good stuff. And you're exactly right. I
Hmm.
mean, well, you hit it earlier. It's just, it's about humanity, whether
right.
it's the principal with the teachers or the students. At the end of the day, we're people, and people need to feel connected and feel valued. And,
Yes.
when we make that our focus, it's kind of hard to go wrong.
Yeah. And I got to give a shout out to my wife too. I'm thinking about the impact she's had on me. Came from a more stable family than mine was, kind of is a Mennonite community. So she has those values that I love. She's just a loving person, and she's kind of like a kid magnet. They just go to her because I think kids can sense
Yeah.
that love and acceptance, and she's shown me that so many times. So she is just a rock for me.
Oh, I love that. That's a good way to end it right there, praising
Hey,
her. Yeah, I love that.
it's been delightful. I can talk about kids in schools and leadership. So, and I don't know how much leadership I got out of that, but you got out of that. But um, you know, it's great
Oh
to
no,
talk.
that was the undercurrent. Yeah. So we have
That
one last one last tough question for you. We kind of alluded to it earlier, but called Lattes and Leaders. So what is your beverage of choice? Is it coffee,
my
latte, cappuccino?
Well, it's interesting. I was in Minneapolis yesterday for some training, and I got to experience. I drive right now. I drive all over the state, 45,000 miles a year. I drive all over Texas, but I had to fly to Minneapolis, and I got in about 2 a.m. last night. So I'm at a hotel with this beautiful background, and my coffee of choice is hotel room coffee, which, as tired as I am, is pretty good. So.
Yeah.
But right after this, I'm headed to a coffee shop right down the street that I know about, and I'm going to get me a real latte. But I love the concept. I love my coffee, and this is the way to meet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Uh, that's why we named it that. I think it's just, kind of an informal way. And, if we were talking at a coffee shop, it would be like this. So sometimes you get
Yeah,
the best nuggets of wisdom from that type of situation. So yeah,
yeah,
thank you for coming today, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're able to etch out the time and just to share, because I know
well,
all the great work you're doing for teachers and administrators and just everyone in the educational realm. So, you
thank you.
pour a lot of your heart into it and for the community, and that's something to be recognized and to thank you for.
Well, back at you, and it's been an honor being on the show, and you're having an influence far beyond what you realize. So thank you.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guest, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.